Hello, everybody. Barry Johns here. Welcome back to another edition of Studio Talk. So there's been a lot of buzz here lately about Dolby Atmos and how the industry is navigating towards that. And the implication is it's going to happen much sooner rather than later. So I kind of want to bring a different perspective, give you some things to consider at that. There have been several prominent YouTube content creators out there that have talked about the fact that Apple is now requiring to get on their playlist or some other type of requirement that the song be mixed in Dolby Atmos, okay? And then the rumors about Spotify, which I believe have been confirmed, also looking at requiring the same thing. And I think at some point we're going to make this transition. I don't think there's any not making this transition. I just think at some point it's just a matter of time and how long that's going to take because it's a matter of practicality. So like I said, some of those YouTube content creators are really talking about these things, but the only thing that bothers me somewhat is those videos are sponsored by Sweetwater. And if you notice on Sweetwater's YouTube channel, they tend to be pushing Dolby Atmos as well. So be suspicious of that. I'm a fan of Sweetwater. I don't have a problem with Sweetwater doing what they're doing, and I certainly don't have a problem with the content creators talking about it. I think I'm going to give you an opposing perspective on it about the timing of when you've got to consider that and some things that I think really need to be in place before you actually consider that. Dolby Atmos obviously requires you to have a lot more speakers, a lot more monitors in your studio. And for most people watching me right now, you have home project studios. And so about what I'm about ready to say is not going to apply to everybody, of course, because I've got a pretty wide range of audience here on this particular channel. But for most of you out there, including me at certain times throughout my journey, one of my biggest investments and most important investments was getting the right monitors for my space. And that's something that you'll continue to evolve in if you continue to mix that way. And when I say if, I'll talk about that here in a minute. So right now, most of you have focused on probably having 2 monitors as well as a subwoofer. Well, this is going to take it into a lot more monitors that you have to have, and placement is absolutely critical. And your room is very important to get that done properly. So there's a big investment in this to be able to get to there, and I'm not so sure how practical that's going to be for the home studio market. So, like I said before, it's coming. There's no question it's coming. As typical with these things, most of your high-end auto manufacturers like Mercedes, BMW, and the like, Volvo, I think, as well, have started to incorporate Dolby Atmos sound systems within their vehicles. And so that's going to start at the high end. It's going to take years, and I mean years, for that to develop into your average vehicle, that most people can afford. And so that's going to take some time. You say, well, Barry, how do you know that? Well, if you want to, all you have to do is looking, if you want to know how quickly this type of technology is going to evolve and how long it will take to actually become common practice, all you have to do is look in reverse to find that out. And you can go back to the days of, when you first got HD television. When HD television first came out, we're talking 720p. That's the advantage of having somebody my age. I've lived through all of this, and I have embraced every bit of it along the way and have typically, historically, been an earlier adopter of these things. But it comes at a cost, okay? For most people, when you got into HD TVs and they became available, they were really expensive. Today, they're dirt cheap, but compared to what they were when they were first introduced. It took at least 8 years before basically the majority of things that you watch on any cable subscription or paid TV service, whether it was HBO, Cinemax, Showtime, it took at least 8 years to fully evolve into that. That did not happen overnight. And so, that kind of whole thing went down. And then we went into 4K. And 4K was the same thing. It took quite a few years before you ever actually saw broadcast TV on 4K. And still to this day, it's a paid premium for many. If you subscribe to YouTube TV as an example, you have to pay more to get the broadcast in 4K because it takes more bandwidth. So, these things take a long time to develop to become into modern state. So I think what most of you have to ask yourself is, what are the odds are that the music you're producing in your home project studio is going to end up, as it stands today, on an Apple playlist? That's where their people pick songs that are out there and put on playlists that they've come out with. And we're not talking about your playlist. We're talking about the ones they come up with, right? Quasi kind of radio for streaming kind of thing, whether it's Apple Music or Spotify. The odds are that's not going to happen for the vast majority of the people. If you happen to have one that falls into that, then you've done a great job and deserve a pat on the back for sure. But I don't think most people fall into that category. So at the end of the day, is it something I think you're going to have to evolve to? Yes, I do believe that. Is it something you need to feel like you need to rush out and do it today? I'm going to say absolutely not, in my opinion. I have zero desire to do that in my studio at this point. I'm going to wait for technology to continue to develop in ways that can make that more affordable and more practical for my particular studio, because it'll happen. As an example, where I think we're going to see this happen pretty soon is when you get into like the Slate VSX system. I think when you get into that, I think that's ultimately going to be where the majority of home project studios are going to land, and they're going to navigate towards mixing with headphones. Now, there was a time for sure, I would say, under no circumstances mix with headphones, but technology has come and it has advanced, and they've made more precision headphones that are designed specifically to do what we do. And so that is changing. So we can't keep these old school thought processes in our mind. We've got to be forward thinking. And this is coming from somebody my age. I've always been forward thinking. So I think it's exciting what can be done, but you need to understand too, that's a whole different skill set that you now have to learn. And if you think about it, there's not even much content out there to watch to really teach and develop you on how to do that. So the bottom line is you've got time. You've got plenty of the time. Don't make any music stores and try to give you the impression that, oh my gosh, I've got to jump on the latest and greatest new thing. Historically, as in my examples before, that is simply not the case. I mean, if you want to look at it in simplistic terms, it took forever. Now, I'm showing my age here. I can actually go back to 8-track, by the way. But I'm showing my age here. From the time when the CD first came out, that took probably 10 or 12 years before car manufacturers totally stopped putting cassette decks and CD in the same, in the same stereo unit. That took at least a decade, okay? And in the same thing, majority of the people went to using back in the day, their iPod or their iPhone to stream through their auxiliary input. But it was only recently in the last, within the last decade for sure, not even that, probably less than that, to where you can't even get a CD player in a car anymore. Not that you'd have need for it anymore. Even something like Apple CarPlay or the Android version of that took forever for that to get and become a mainstay. Even the ability to do that via Bluetooth is still a relatively recent thing that was affordable. And so the bottom line is this stuff takes a long time to develop into the mainstay of people's experiences and the way they experience it. Because we all know today, the vast majority of way that I believe most people consume their music is via some type of earbud, okay, or a headphone, but mostly some type of earbud or headphones, and then in their car. That's where most people do it. When I was younger, we had these massive stacks of stereo systems and big speakers. That's the way we did it. And your audiophiles out there still do it that way, but those things are not sold in the way they used to. They're not as popular anymore. I've got 3 teenagers here at the house, and I've given like these big Polk audio speakers and a receiver, and they just passed them down, and they've never gotten used, because quite frankly, they've just gotten used to enjoying the music, and that's the way they experience it. So it's the way they know, and that's using headphones, okay? So the bottom line is, yes, it's coming, no question about it. The next bottom line is, ultimately, is it going to improve our experience listening to music? I believe it will. I think the experience is going to be more enjoyable and more three-dimensional or quadri-dimensional, whatever kind of dimensional you want to throw into it. It's a difference between, listening to the speaker on a TV versus a full surround sound in your room. Okay, it's a different experience altogether. And so I think it's coming. I think it's a good thing. There's just no need whatsoever to think for one solitary second that you need to go out and do it today. Unless you want to and you've got the money and you want to do it and you want to be an earlier adopter, then by all means, I think you should do it. So if you like the things I talk about on this channel, do me a favor, hit that like, that subscribe, and that notification bell. But most importantly, help me out by subscribing to the channel. Work really hard for you folks. Do me a favor, leave some comments down below. Tell me what your thoughts are on this. Is this something you plan to do anytime soon? Or is your thinking more like mine? Just sit back and wait. And as it develops, we'll see where we go and we'll see what technology advances to make it more affordable and more reasonable to get the end result that we're all ultimately going to try and get to. And that is great sounding songs, okay? In the most enjoyable way possible for the end user to listen to them, okay? So until next time, I hope every one of you have a great day. Bye-bye.